We're continuing our series this morning, looking at this theme of brainwashed. And many of you will know that I've been involved with youth camps for a little while. Well, more than a little while. More than I care to remember, actually. But youth camps are tremendous times of stimulation and encouragement to old fogies like me, because I get to mix with young kids. And I particularly enjoy the 14 to 17-year-old age group because I just think they're very honest and they want answers to questions. They won't take just stuff that you and I think they will be happy with. They will push. And it's just a brilliant age group to work with. And I've been privileged, as you know, to be involved with Hill House camps. We've got Stephen Ray here this morning, our friends from Weston. And they, with us, have done those camps for donkey's years. So it's been really good. But one of the things I'm very conscious of over the years, we run these camps, and if you've ever been on a youth camp, you'll know that the typical scenario, they're early mornings and late nights. And you can get to about Thursday night, you can ask the kids basically to do anything and they'll do it. Because stuff happens to you, emotionally, physically, psychologically, that, well, in all honesty, one of the things we worry about sometimes is, are they too susceptible to suggestion? Now, that's a difficult question for those of us who do youth camps, because you want the children to be busy, you want them to be engaged, you want them to be doing things and having fun, but are you opening them because they're tired to suggestion? So if you're asking them, by the end of the week, do you want to become a Christian? Or do you want to get back straight with God? You've got to be very careful and measured, because obviously a lot of these young people are in a vulnerable place. Am I making sense? Yeah? And that's an honest thing to ask, and it's something that I think a lot of Christian workers and youth workers have learned to appreciate increasingly over the years. You'll have heard it said, no doubt, that the church is equally guilty in some of the ways it does things, of almost brainwashing people, of trying to get them to think a certain way, act a certain way, or whatever. And this is a very, very serious problem for us. As I reflected on the work we've done with young people, I've honestly come to the opinion that giving teens the opportunity to have a great time and be re-energized and reinvigorated and encouraged and strengthened is a blessing. And actually, the brainwashing kind of issue isn't coming from the Christian camp. I think what we're discovering increasingly is that the brainwashing stuff is what they come to camp with, as they live their lives like you and me in the real world. And that real world tells us all kinds of stuff that isn't always good. And we can be led as young people, as adults, as children, down false alleys, to dead-end streets. And some of us here this morning will know exactly what I'm talking about, because in your own life, you've been hoodwinked into thinking, if I do this, if I do that, if I pursue this, pursue that, I will end up, and everything will be okay. And you're sitting here this morning, and the truth is, you've got regrets. Hey, I'll put my hand up to that. Because there is this stuff that we're told, we're kind of brainwashed into thinking that it's okay. Now, the other week when we started the series, we talked about the world's way being over here and God's way being over here. And the reality is we kind of live somewhere in the middle. And a number of you spoke to me after that service and said you could identify with that. Because the truth is, we like to have a foot in both camps. And we know what God's way is, and we feel we should go that way, and we do try to go that way. But with other things, well, it's a bit less sure, and so we'd rather maybe just go this way a little bit. And so we end up kind of slam bang in the middle and living in the grey. We're kind of living for God, but we're kind of living in the world. We're not committed. And really soon we discover that actually there is no grey. We are either living for God or not living for God. But we're brainwashed, to use that word, into thinking that we're okay in the grey, when in reality we're in the darkness. This week I'm excited to talk about some specific ways in which we're brainwashed in the world. I'm being deliberately provoking in using that word, but come with me on this discovery this morning. Don't get me wrong, I'm not here to tell you the world is evil. I'm not going to be like that. You know, the devil has all the good music, you know, because Jesus has some great music too. But I'll say this to you. There is a battle for our minds. There is a battle for our hearts. There is a battle for our wills. And you look around society and you'll see this for yourself. And if you're not careful, if we're not paying attention, we can so easily and unknowingly drift to the wrong side. And as I say, some of us sat here. The reality is this morning, yeah, we've done that. We know that we've gone too far. So I want to be Katniss Everdeen for this example. Do you know who Katniss Everdeen is? Anybody? Yes. Who is Katniss Everdeen? The Hunger Games. Come on, star pupil. How many of you know the Hunger Games? 2 of you. Brilliant. Okay. Oh, dear me. This is going to be good. The part is played by Jennifer Lawrence. I'm not going to be Jennifer Lawrence, but I just want you to think of me firing a bow and arrow. Now, it was my intention to have a real bow and arrow here and to actually do this in the service. Health and safety, however, said that I should not do it. So instead, I want you to have this picture in your mind of Katniss Everdeen, the Hunger Games, and I want you to think about a target. Okay? So we've got this target. If you imagine now I'm shooting my bow and arrow at this target, okay? If I deliberately, if I purposefully miss the bullseye, I mean, that's wrong. Because the idea of the game, isn't it, is to fire your arrow into that bullseye. Now, you may have heard of the word sin. The word sin in a Christian context. What that means is missing the bullseye. That's basically what sin is. Missing the mark. That every decision you and I make in life is like we're shooting at a target. And sometimes, let's be honest, we deliberately choose not to aim for the bullseye. We know what the bullseye is, God's will, his intention, but we kind of deliberately fire to the right or the left. Living God's way means that instead of letting our arrows fall short or missing the target, we are aiming for the bullseye. That's what this is about. And the further we are getting away from the center of the target, the more distance we are putting between ourselves and God. So let's look at some ways that maybe we're brainwashed not to aim for the center of the target. So let me start with this. This is for a certain generation of you young people that are here this morning, and I'm sure those of us who maybe aren't so young anymore can also identify with it. Because one of the things that we're brainwashed into thinking is that our parents are stupid. Okay? Now, believe me, those people look stupid. Okay, well, I think they are. I can't begin to tell you as a pastor how many times I have sat with young people, and people in their 20s and into their 30s and even older, who honestly will tell you that they think their parents are stupid. And, you know, I'm not stupid enough to not think for 1 minute that there are times when John and Kate have no doubt spoken to each other and said, they're just stupid. I'm sure that conversation goes on. And I'm sure those of you who are a lot older, at times when you reflect on your life and your relationship with your parents, there were times when you thought your parents as well were stupid. You see, the world tells us that parents are jerks, that they don't get it, that kids know better. And you remember that feeling when you were young, and some of you are still there, of course. You think genuinely that, no, you know what's right. What clue have your parents got? And so you go behind their backs, you argue with them, you fight with them. And according to the world, well, that's okay. What does God say about parents? Well, in Colossians chapter 3, it says, children, obey your parents in everything, for this pleases the Lord. That's a difficult one. The world wants us to disobey our parents, and yet God emphatically says, I want you to obey them. They're complete opposites. Now, obeying your parents is not always an easy thing to do. Have I disobeyed my parents? Absolutely. But the important thing is, if we're aiming for the target, the bullseye, if we're aiming to live God's way, if we're going to take God's lead in this life that we live, then respecting parents is a key thing. Where are you aiming? And I am serious to you, perhaps younger ones here this morning. Where are you aiming in terms of your relationship with your parents? The second thing that I think we're hoodwinked into wondering about today is this whole issue of making time for ourselves. The reality is, at work, if you're lucky enough to have a job today, you'll probably have to turn up to work 5 days a week, and at your job you will quite possibly have several people that you have to report to at different levels, and none of those people necessarily communicate to one another. So your tasks probably have to be managed by you. You have to see to things. And even when you're done with work, there's still more work to be done. So you can clock off from the office 5:30, 6 o'clock. But the reality is you're probably bringing work home with you. On the weekends, you still got work-related things to do. You say to your spouse, I'll only be a little time. I just need to check the emails. You maybe just need to read through a report Sunday night before you head off on Monday. You may need to make a phone call or even drop a text to somebody. But the reality is you never really get any time for yourself. Any time off. And what do we say? We say, welcome to life. We kind of wear it with a badge of honor that says, well, that's life. We say it to young people who find it a strain and a struggle. Well, come on now, pull up your socks. That's what it's like. They say that those of us who live in Western Europe, and particularly here in the UK, have the most packed schedules. We work longer hours than any of our European neighbours. Work, family, leisure, church, hobbies, special interest. It's non-stop. When you have free time, you try and get together with friends, but in reality, they are rare moments. And in amongst it all, of course, you've got to keep up with your social networking. There's Facebook, Twitter. You've got to see your family. You need to go and drop some flowers off to your mother because it is Mothering Sunday. You need to eat, of course, and then there's the whole question of sleeping. And you lost an hour last night, so blinking heck, you better get in bed early tonight. We are exhausted. You can identify with that, can't you? Many of us are sat here this morning, and yet the world tells us, yes, come on, that's the way. When did you last spend some time with you? Let alone with God. You go to work, you go to school, you go to college, you do sports, you see friends, you Facebook, you sleep, you eat, you get up, and you get, God gets shifted to the bottom of the to-do list. Don't get me wrong, I'm really happy you're here at Mariah this morning, but spending quality one-to-one time with God should be at the top of our list. Now, I'm conscious that there are many things we need to be aware of. Certain things that we need to keep in balance. There's a reading from Matthew chapter 6. I'm not sure who's going to read this for us. Is this Beth or Helen? I know I've read the first couple, but you're all right. You're breathing a sigh of relief. So have you got a microphone? You haven't. Wow, we're going to get you a microphone. We're going to sort that out. No problem. It's all right, Lisa. We'll get you a microphone. I'll carry on while we get you a microphone. In Matthew chapter 6, it says, seek the kingdom of God above all else and live righteously. He'll give you everything you need. In other words, we need to put God first by giving him our time. Slowing down. We need to maybe switch our phones off. There's a novel idea. Take an hour this week where we don't do anything but just be. When's the last time you did that? Now, it might mean that you need to sit down with your Bible and maybe have a time of prayer. Or maybe, actually, it will mean for you that you spend time with your family. Fellas, that you spend time with your wife. Ladies, that you find time to go and see your kid taking part in that production. for all of us, it probably means trying to get on board with reconnecting with God. And today, of course, we are launching our new Connect groups, the small groups here at Moriah. Now, there are lists up in the fellowship hall where you can see what group you're in. Some of you have already had a look. Do have a look. Any problems, come and see me. Those groups will start meeting whenever they feel like, basically. As long as they do so before next September, I don't mind. But we need to connect. We need to be involved. We need to spend time with God. Stopping the distractions of Facebook and texting and bringing work home. Spend time. Make time for God. Such an important thing. The world is telling us, it's brainwashing us. No, you've got to be busy, you've got to multitask, you've got to stay connected with everybody at all times. Don't switch your phone off, your inbox is going to fill up. And God is saying, whoa. Time out. Slow down. Is it any wonder many of us burn out? We need to disconnect at times. I just find it amazing. When I read about the life of Jesus, there were these times, and it just says, he went away into the hillside to be alone. I think some of us need to learn just what that's like. Look at your schedule. And think about where you're aiming. Okay, next point. This is an interesting one. Every religion is right. I mean, that's what the world says, isn't it? That's a great idea. This is a huge one. In many ways, I guess I should be doing a separate series on this. But just to say, let me cram it in here really quickly this morning into a few minutes. The world tells us that truth is a subjective thing. You can't have absolutes anymore. You can't say, no, I'm right and you're wrong. That's the way that we've now gone with our liberal social agenda. So when it comes to religion, we're basically saying, well, Christianity can't claim to be the sole arbiter of truth. The world tells us that, no, you've got to be open now. You've got to be open to the likes of Buddha and Jesus and Ganesha and giant flying spaghetti monsters and Morgan Freeman. I even know Christians who believe in Jesus, yet they also believe that Buddha was a god. Now reconcile that one in your brain for a minute. Maybe you've been thinking that. And there's a logical problem here. There can only be one option. Either there are multiple gods, or there are no gods, or there is one God. The problem with multiple gods is our next point. And I want you to read, are we ready? This is from 1 Corinthians chapter 8. Beth is ready to read this. 1 Corinthians chapter 8, verses 5 and 6. Thanks, Beth.
For even if there are so-called gods, whether in heaven or on earth, as indeed there are many gods and many lords, yet for us there is but one God, the Father, from whom all things came and for whom we live. And there is but one Lord, Jesus Christ, through whom all things came and through whom we live.
Thanks, Beth. Now, I'm all about, I get religious tolerance. I would never advocate that Christians need to go out and be militant against other religions or anything like that. But if you say you don't believe in gravity and you jump off a cliff, I'm not going to be surprised when you hit the ground. So I know this is a massive topic, and we're told today that no, we must be tolerant and we must be very liberal in our ideas, and that's the way the world will get on better with the other. Well, that's one thing, but to deny the truth of the Christian gospel, I can't do that. The world says that all religions are right, and yet here we see that God was saying he's the only way. We need to sort this one out in our minds, because we're being brainwashed. We're being encouraged to miss the target. So here's our next point. We should idolize people. This is an interesting one. We should idolize people. This one's going to be tough for a lot of us. I love the dictionary definition of idolize. One dictionary says it's to worship as a god broadly, to love or admire to excess. The world tells us that it's okay to just give everything that we have to the cult of celebrity. One of the most valuable ways that we are told we can worship God, however, is by giving him our attention, our focus, our time. Having quiet time, praying, reading your Bible, going on a mission project to Chad or to Wrexham in North Wales. There'll be more news about those opportunities in the near future. Getting involved with Christian camps. Getting involved in an outreach that we're doing as a church. We worship God with our time. Who's the celebrity that just announced she's pregnant? Do you know? Who's the... what was it? Sam from what? X Factor. Is she pregnant? Is that the one? And somebody else from that show's just had a baby, is that right? Who was that? Who's the guy? The guy. Simon Cowell. Just had a baby. I think his wife or partner had the baby, not him. I wonder how many questions we could ask where between us we could probably all get the answers to what's happening in the celebrity world. What's the name of King David's baby who died as an infant? Don't worry, I had to look it up as well. We know far more about the celebrity world than we do about God's world. The Emmys, the Oscars, MTV Movie Awards, Nickelodeon's Kids' Choice Awards, People Magazine, Star, In Touch Weekly. All of these shows and magazines put people up on a pedestal to be worshipped. Our culture gifts them and awards them basically for doing nothing. That's what the world tells us is okay. So now then, Helen, are you ready? This is the reading from Jeremiah chapter 16. Let's listen to this one.
O Lord, my strength and my fortress, my refuge in time of distress. To you the nations will come from the ends of the earth and say, our ancestors possessed nothing but false gods, worthless idols that did them no good. Do people make their own gods? Yes, but they are not gods.
Thank you. Lady Gaga, whatever her name is, she has like 23 million followers on Twitter. Mariah Risker has about 7, I think. Who are you following? Who are you aiming for? Where's your target here? Another thing we're told is be ticked off at people who wrong you. Now, I've got to be careful here because I have to confess that there are times in my life when I do extend the international sign of friendship to people when they cut me up at roundabouts. What do you do when people make you mad? When people wind you up? The world tells us, hold a grudge, get even, talk behind their backs. I went to see a colleague in Cardiff at the start of the week. I sat with him in Starbucks and on Monday morning. Fascinating. I go over to Benito's now and again, meet many of you in there. Do a lot of pastoral work in Benito's, lovely. I get a ton of my creative ideas in such places. Why? Because a common occurrence in any cafe or coffee shop is people. And I'm a nosy Parker. And I can't help but listen in to other people's conversations. Do you do that? I'm not the only one. And the reality is that you sit and listen to people's conversations, and it is amazing the way people sit there and they're talking to one another and the stuff they're talking about. She's so stupid. Nobody even likes her. She's put on a lot of weight. I couldn't decide whether they were talking about one of their friends, one of their mums, one of their daughters. I don't know. To which the other one replies, yeah, I know. I heard that so-and-so is a lot thinner than her. At which point I thought, I don't want to listen anymore. Problem is, when they all start talking about fat and thin, you see, that makes me hungry. But there we go. These are the normal conversations going on in Starbucks, Costa's, across the road. They're the normal conversations the world over. We're taught that it's okay to gossip and be nasty about people. It's okay to be mad at someone. It's okay to say mean things about people. Hey, people rub us up. People do things wrong. I'm sure I rub you up. I'm sure there are things I do wrong. But, friends, the way of God is to aim for better, not to talk ill of each other. God says that the biblical way to handle a situation when somebody makes you mad is that we should reconcile, not hold grudges. Because if we're mad at people, it can tear families apart. It can tear a church apart. God's way is to reconcile with that person. Beth, are you ready? Here we go. Matthew chapter 5. You knew it was coming. Here we go.
You have heard it said to people long ago, do not murder, and anyone who murders will be subject to judgment. But I tell you that anyone who is angry with his brother will be subject to judgment. Again, anyone who says to his brother, Raka, is answerable to the Sanhedrin. But anyone who says, you fool, will be in danger of the fire of hell.
Now that's uncomfortable reading to our modern years, isn't it? See, in God's eyes, anger is as bad as murder. So when you're mad at someone, the question is, where are you aiming? Are you aiming at God's way, about fixing the problem with love and compassion and a measure of grace? Or are you just interested in your own opinion? No, they've wronged me, that's it. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to play a game. You ready for this? Are you sitting on the edge of your seat? Okay, quick game, and this is called Apples to Apples. And you ever played this one before? Any of you? Okay, so we're going to try this. So I got some apples here. Who would like an apple? One. Who would like an apple? Anybody? Anybody like an apple? Anybody at all? Anybody want an apple? These are freshly bought. Thank you, Lowry. What would you do in order to get this apple? Would you stand up and quack like a duck? No. Well done. Would anybody here stand up and quack like a duck to have this apple? Or even to have this bag of apples? Well done. You can have that bag. I'll give this one to Lowry for daring to have a go. Well done. There you go. Bless you. Okay. So it is amazing, isn't it, what we'll do in order to try and get something. And in this game, Apples to Apples, you haven't tried to feed him an apple already, have you? So here's the next one. Right, I've got another apple here. Okay. Would anybody like this apple? Who would like this apple? I'm serious. Who would like this apple? You'd like it? What would you be prepared to do for it, Sharon? I'll stop you there before you embarrass yourself too much. It's amazing, isn't it? You know, I remember when, blackberry was a soft fruit. A wee was something you did in the toilet. And an apple, well, an apple's pretty self-explanatory. And this is my next point, actually. This whole idea of I need that. This is another lie we're being sold. This is a way in which we're hoodwinked in the world today. And I say that as someone who loves gadgets. How I wish Steve Williams had really not just gotten me an empty box, but had the real thing in there. Brother. But we do, don't we? We live in a world that tells us we need things. Do you know that the version of the iPad that we have right now is 2 to 3 versions behind what Apple is actually capable of releasing today? What they do is figure out how many features they can indulge people with, and they'll upgrade to that level, and then people will freak out and say, oh, I want that, I've got to have that. So the new iPhone 5. I know Steve Wharton's got one. Who else has got one? iPhone 5, who's got one? You see? He's S. You've even gone up another one. It's ridiculous. Because we want the guy. Sarah, have you got one? Welcome back from Malawi, by the way. Great tan. You're looking healthy. Welcome back. So, we are sold this lie that we need it. That's the world we live in. If we didn't, companies like Apple wouldn't be so successful. The world tells us it's good to want these things. It's good to want more. I'm not saying it's wrong to have things. I'm not saying that it's wrong to want something. But it's that unhealthy, obsessive desire to want something that someone else has and we don't actually need it. God says, you see, we should live differently. So here's our next reading. Hebrews chapter 13.
Keep your lives free from the love of money and be content with what you have, because God has said, never will I leave you, never will I forsake you.
Thank you. It's not just about gadgets, but relationships as well. It's about so many different areas of our lives. We can be so desperate to have things, and we're missing God's best. We're missing the target. The next one's a huge one for me. The average person does this 455 times a day. Any idea what I'm talking about? Lying. Lying. In fact, that number was a lie, because 82% of all statistics are completely made up. Did you know that? That's probably a lie as well. But, where it's a difficult one. It kind of links in with the whole thing of, what Mammy doesn't know won't hurt her. Lying is something we learnt on our own when we were first able to talk. This little one here will soon learn it, I'm sure. I remember well. At home, Marc! Shout up the stairs. Who ate all the biscuits? Klinos did. Klinos is my sister. Marc, who drew on the wall in your bedroom? Klinos did. Marc, who set the rug on fire? Sarah. No. I think it was me, letting the fire go once. Lying. Do you lie? It's a difficult one in all of our lives because it also picks up on the whole issue of our integrity. Because one of the things we do is over-exaggerate at times. I caught a fish. It was this big. I have a friend who can triple salto, quadruple leap and spin off the back of a bus. Really? Do you really? You meet people like that, they always have a friend who's incredible at doing stuff. Our integrity, over-exaggeration, can actually be little more than lying. Let's listen to this quote from Matthew.
Simply let your yes be yes and your no, no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil one.
So what does that mean? Jesus is talking about making an oath when you know that you're not going to fulfill it. When you tell someone something that isn't true, even if it's a simple over-exaggeration, you're in dangerous ground. He's saying, look, just say it the way it is. Let your yes be yes, your no be no. Did you eat all the biscuits? No. But really, you mean yes. Did you really climb up Mount Kilimanjaro with nothing other than a penknife and a box of Mr. Kipling French fancy tarts? No. The world is telling us continue to over-exaggerate and skew the truth. God is telling us to have integrity and aim properly. We're getting towards the end. Here's a fun one. Sex sells. This is a great one in the world. Hoodwinking us, brainwashing us into thinking. There's no question that our society throws out this idea that sex, outside the context of marriage, is fun, it's awesome, it's cool. We should all do it. There's nothing wrong with it. That's the way of the world. So you get these films, Friends with Benefits, No Strings Attached, the classic movie there, American Pie, 5 youngsters who make a pact to lose their virginity before they graduate. And those are just the films. And many of us have watched them and laughed with them and everything. But what are they saying to us? Let alone what is the music and the advertisements and the TV shows that we watch and the magazines that we buy. Our culture is immersed with sex. Did you know that the porn industry brings in more money than the Premier League, Six Nations Rugby, World Snooker and World Darts combined? In America, it brings in more than the NFL, the NBA, and Major League Baseball combined. Sex is everywhere. And this is what Jesus says in Matthew chapter 5. Thanks, Helen.
But I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart.
If you've ever looked at somebody, fellas, and thought, dang, I like that. Jesus is saying you're as guilty as the guy who actually went and slept with her. God calls us to be sexually pure. The world tells us, do whatever you like, it's okay. Where are you aiming? The world wants to tell us, just chill, don't be extreme. Live in the grey. Live in the grey. When you're not aiming for God's way, well, what does Jesus say? Luke chapter 6. Thanks, Beth.
Why do you call me Lord, Lord, and do not do what I say?
Every decision we make is like an arrow being shot either towards God's target in the middle or the world's target everywhere else. And what we need to do, friends, is aim for the right target. Brings up a huge problem. Because not one of us in this room are perfect. Already this morning, some of the things I've mentioned, some of us here are already thinking, that's me done for them. Because I've missed the bullseye. I've not lived my life as I should. If these are God's standards, I am far short of what he wants. But we're also brainwashed into thinking that there's no way back. And the message of the Christian gospel is, you can miss the target, but there is a way back. You can louse up and get it wrong. You can fall short. You can miss the mark. And God will still work in your life. Forgive you. Restore you. Help you to live for his glory. I don't know whether you noticed, but the outline that I've just given this morning about the way the world brainwashes us, it's actually the exact opposite to the Ten Commandments. When God gave Moses the Ten Commandments, the Israelites were confused and thought that by strictly following them and adhering to them, they would be on target, they would be sin-free. But that's impossible. The law doesn't show us anything more than the fact we missed the mark. It shows us how bad our aim is. This target was our ticket into heaven. I'd be in trouble, would you? Because I miss it. I don't get it right. But Jesus Christ gets God's bullseye every time. He's the one who can reconnect us with God. Let's hear what Paul says in Romans chapter 12 as we bring things to a close this morning.
Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, this good, pleasing, and perfect will.
So where are you struggling? Where are you missing the mark? Maybe you realize this morning that your Facebook page is becoming your God, or you're grinding yourself into the ground doing this, that, and the other, never having time for yourself, let alone for Jesus. It's maybe time this morning to just let Jesus help you. Let him aim for you. Let him get you to the bullseye of God's purposes and plans. So that as we live our lives in this real world, and all these mixed messages are going on around us, we won't be brainwashed into thinking, well, that's all right. But rather we'll aim for God's perfect